Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really fascinating piece of source material called Eternal Truths, 7 Lessons for a Transformed Life. And the whole premise here is just so compelling. The source makes the case that these ancient stories found in the Bible, they aren't just, dusty historical accounts that you passively read. They are actually highly practical, transformative tools meant for real people, like you and me, who are trying to navigate real life right now. So, whether you grew up hearing these texts or you're just genuinely curious about how they apply psychologically and emotionally, we're going to visually map out the text's 7 core lessons today and see exactly how they connect to the human experience.
Okay, so let's take a quick look at the agenda. We're going on a 4-part journey today. We'll kick things off with brokenness and grace, then we'll move into navigating delay and fear, follow that up with forgiveness and purpose, and finally, we'll wrap it all together with an eternal perspective. All right, let's jump in. Section 1 is all about brokenness and grace. Finding power in imperfection.
Right out of the gate, the source material tackles a really common psychological hurdle. It's that nagging lie that you were just too flawed or you've made way too many mistakes to ever be used for a greater purpose. To completely shatter that idea of feeling disqualified, the text points to 3 major historical figures as case studies. And what's wild here is that their greatest weaknesses became the exact places where incredible power was showcased. I mean, look at Moses. The text notes he severely doubted himself and had a debilitating fear of public speaking, yet he was the guy used to free an entire nation. Then you have David, a leader who made some incredibly terrible, very public mistakes, but was still called a man after God's own heart. And of course, Peter, who notoriously denied Jesus 3 times during his darkest hour, yet he was completely restored and became one of the boldest leaders in early Christianity. The text puts this front and center to prove that perfection, it's simply not a prerequisite for impact.
So that brings us to how the text actually defines grace, which is absolutely crucial. It describes grace as a force stronger than your past, capable of transforming hidden scars and regretful failures into glory. It's such a message of deep, direct empathy from the source material. It emphasizes that because you don't have to be perfect, grace is always going to outmatch and outlast your past mistakes. It's an incredibly powerful reframing of personal failure. Think about it. The text is suggesting that your lowest moments might actually be the very things that qualify you for your greatest purpose. Moving right along to Section 2, navigating delay and fear, trusting the timing and the presence. In this second phase of our journey, the source really digs into the highly relatable, everyday human struggles of waiting and anxiety. You know, those moments when life just isn't going according to your carefully planned schedule, and that feeling of panic starts creeping in. The text asks a very direct, piercing question. Have you ever prayed and heard nothing? Wow. It's a profound acknowledgement of that heavy, isolating silence so many of us experience during a waiting season. You ask for breakthrough, you plead for healing or an answer, and you're met with what essentially feels like a blank brick wall. And it's in that exact, uncomfortable space that the source notes many people start losing hope. But look at how brilliantly this illustrates the concept that delay is not denial. By pulling up these historical examples, the source argues that divine pacing just takes time. I mean, look at the track record. We see Abraham waiting years for a promise to be fulfilled. Joseph is sitting in a literal prison before he ever steps foot in the palace. The Israelites wander the wilderness for an entire generation. And Lazarus, he actually dies before Jesus even arrives. The pattern here is unmistakable. The text makes the case that the waiting season is never an accident. It's often the exact thing that prepares the blessing, or more importantly, prepares you to handle what's coming. Now, shifting the focus to our internal battle against fear, the source highlights a moment of absolute panic in the text. Picture this. The disciples are trapped in a tiny boat during a violent storm on the ocean, literally terrified for their lives. But according to the narrative, their sheer panic is instantly met with this incredibly powerful, calming command from Jesus. Peace, be still. In a fraction of a second, all that stormy chaos is silenced by one single authoritative presence. And the source breaks this down into such a fascinating juxtaposition of how this presence actually works when we face our own personal storms. On one side, like the text notes, God calms the storm, meaning the external problem, whatever it is miraculously removed. But on the other side, God calms you. The source makes this brilliant point that while the external problem or the storm might still be raging all around you, a divine presence changes everything by bringing you internal peace. Actually, think about it like this. The circumstance itself might not change one bit, but your reaction to it, completely transformed. Let's shift gears now into Section 3, forgiveness and purpose, healing wounds and finding meaning. The text acknowledges that handling deep betrayal, intense pain,
and that completely natural human instinct for retaliation are easily some of the hardest lessons we will ever face in life. To illustrate how to navigate this, the source presents a truly radical example. Father, forgive them, which were words spoken by Jesus while literally suffering on the cross. The text is very careful to emphasize that forgiveness isn't about validating the wrong that was done to you. It absolutely does not mean that what happened was okay. No way. Rather, it means you are actively making a choice for your own freedom, instead of living in a toxic, poisonous prison of bitterness. It's an internal, conscious choice to cut the chains that keep you tied to your past pain.
And when we talk about the pain caused by other people, we have to look at this profound realization from Joseph. What you meant for evil, God used for good. This really anchors the concept that your deepest pain might actually end up becoming someone else's healing. Or it might be the exact crucible you needed to perfectly prepare you for your true calling. The text insists that your testimony, the one that was born right out of your worst struggles, has immense, immeasurable value.
The source outlines this entire progression from suffering to strength in 3 really clear steps. First, you endure the pain and the tears. Second, you trust that nothing is wasted in those hands. And third, you get to witness that suffering transformed into purpose. This is how hope is maintained through the darkest chapters. The core emphasis here is that the heartbreak and the waiting are never, ever wasted because, and I just love how the text puts this, resurrection out of suffering is a specialty.
Which brings us to our final stop, Section 4, an eternal perspective, shifting focus to what lasts forever.
In this final thematic chapter, we're zooming way out from our personal, everyday, earthly struggles to look at the macro, eternal viewpoint. The source starkly contrasts 2 completely different value systems. On the left side, we have our earthly treasures, money, fame, success, things that the text points out are highly temporary and will eventually just fade away. But on the right, we have eternal things, love, faith, compassion, and truth, the stuff that actually lasts forever. The source really challenges us to stop and ask, are we spending our lives building for the temporary applause of earth, or are we investing in the enduring, permanent treasures of heaven?
To bring this all together into a really practical lesson on love, the text offers us this amazing mini case study, the prodigal son's return. Let's walk through this real quick. Here's a son who totally wasted his entire inheritance, failed completely by every worldly standard, and expected nothing less than total rejection upon finally coming back home. But what actually happened? The father ran toward him instead. The text uses this beautifully to show that no matter how far someone falls, divine love remains a constant, welcoming force. It doesn't push the broken away, it eagerly sprints right toward them. Which leads us directly to this ultimate, comforting truth from the source. His mercy is greater than your mistakes. It reiterates that grace reaches so much deeper than any human shame or failure ever could. It's a constant heartbeat running all the way through this text. The idea that you simply cannot outrun, and you certainly can't outfail, this level of unconditional love. We're going to wrap up the explainer today with this very specific, lingering thought straight from the source text: God is still writing your story. It's such a powerful reminder that your current chapter, no matter how confusing, difficult, or painful it might be right now, is not the end of the book. The source leaves us encouraged to reflect and to remember that we are never alone in this journey. So as you look at your own life and all the concepts we've unpacked together today, I want to leave you with this final thought to really chew on. How might your current delays, your storms, and your struggles be setting the stage right now for the absolute most powerful and purposeful chapter of your story yet?